The Pied Piper. Most of y'all are probably familiar with the story. About a story about a man, the Pied Piper, who was a rat catcher by trade and has some pretty much unsavory appetites at night during his own pleasure time, so to speak. Pretty much the story takes place around 1300 AD, where there's accounts where he was a rat catcher who promised the townspeople he can get rid of all the rat infection that was going on within the town. And he carried out his duties. He carried out his duties to the fullest. Alas, though, when he finished doing it and expected to receive compensation for this job, he was not paid, and the townspeople reneged on their promise and their word, and the monetary value of the services for the goods of his services. So, pretty much in a nutshell, he decides to get revenge on the people by seducing and kidnapping the children by playing the instrument he plays, and takes them out of the city to never be heard from again. Now, this sounds like a children's story, and you have to understand it was very disturbing to me even then as a kid. But then again, like I said, I was a little boy, so I wouldn't understand what the word pedophilia meant. But needless to say, only one of three kids, according to the story, were left behind. And this is when one of the early manuscripts is burned, because we find out later on the story was actually destroyed, but some stuff still leaked out. One child was deaf, the other child was lame, and the other was blind, so he couldn't see where the Pied Piper was going. And like I said, he took the children and pretty much had seduced those children. This is what they don't tell you in the story, the children's story. They try to clean it up as much as possible, and that's what history mostly does. Or with the story, I should say. Not actually history, but the story. I say this to get to the point now, because in this day and time, we still have modern day, so to speak, Pied Pipers. You know, pedophilia is not a laughing matter. It's something that is going on. It's a very sick disease, and the children are one to ultimately suffer for it. So I'm pretty sure the Pied Piper himself had a sex cult, and that kind of leads a segue to what today's topic is about. Is Mr. Robert Kelly, aka R. Kelly, Mr. aka Mr. 12 Play. Pretty much, let's go through the whole history. Let's go through the whole history of R. Kelly. Now, for me to sit here and say I wasn't a fan of his music coming up, especially in the 90s, because I was a teenager in the 90s up to this point now, I can't sit here and say 12 Play wasn't a classic album or the R album. I can't sit here and tell a lie about that. And that kind of leads to segue what's going on. Like, he uses music to take advantage of the youth, much like the Pied Piper in the story so I spoke on earlier. So, what does this lead in this point? Well, let's go ahead and backtrack a few years. Now, in the 90s, I had a homegirl of mine, a friend of mine. This is like when R. Kelly came out, not doing public announcement, but like doing 12 Play. A friend of mine, she was from Chicago originally. And she told me, and she used to tell stories. Back then, the stories was unbelievable to be true, which in retrospect now, in hindsight, looking back on it, she was dead on the money. She used to tell stories about how R. Kelly used to be posted up at the high schools, getting his parking lot pimping on, so to speak, with underage girls. These stories about R. Kelly was on even then. But back then in the 90s, I didn't believe the story. It was just too outrageous to believe at that time. But she was dead on about it. And then what it really made me start realizing there was some truth to the stories, I'll never forget. It wouldn't be till a few years later, which, as you already know, R. Kelly got himself in some hot water because there was a videotape that leaked out, which thanks to his own negligence, because the videotape actually came from his own premises where he had cameras, he had everything filmed. Pretty much in a nutshell, there was a sex tape that came out, and yes, I've seen the tape. Pretty much everybody, this time I was in college, everybody saw this tape. That's well documented now. And by the way, you shouldn't have a copy of that tape because it's considered child pedophilia. But pretty much everybody on campus had saw this tape pretty much when I was in college. Pretty much he was dealing with different women, sleeping with different women. One woman he was giving analingus to. Others he was having sex with. But the one that really got him in some hot water was there was a particular clip of a woman that was giving him fellatio. I'm trying to be clean for right now. And it ended up with him giving her a golden shower. That's pretty much the gist of what happened in that video. This is the scene that got him in some hot water. Makes it even worse because the rumor has it, and I don't know if this has been confirmed, but the rumor has it that girl was Sparkle's niece. Sparkle was a singer who was under R. Kelly, who got put on by R. Kelly. She's very talented, by the way, too. Rumor has it was her niece that was in that tape. Again, I can't confirm or deny it, but this is what I've actually heard. But fast forward, we know R. Kelly has to stands on trial for the pedophilia. This came right on the heels after Jay-Z and R. Kelly had just completed their collaboration album, Best of the Both Worlds. And right around this point, Jay-Z disassociated himself with him right at that point, and rightfully so to do so. Needless to say, R. Kelly's trial didn't even come on to around like 2008, I believe. But there was a precursor, which a parody, which actually ended up coming to reality by a person named Aaron McGruder. For those who are not familiar who Aaron McGruder is the creator of the comic strip The Boondocks, which has just been adapted to a television show that was on the Cartoon Network. Very classic show if you never watched it. Very, very classic, and I recommend that you definitely watch off. I would say 3 to 4 seasons, because the last season was just actually terrible. But I digress from the point. There was the second episode of the first season of Boondocks was called The Trial of R. Kelly. Pretty much in a nutshell, the character Tom DuBois, who's basically a coon who's married, basically a coon, he was actually the district attorney prosecuted against it for R. Kelly on the trial, so he was against R. Kelly. Now, Huey, which is one of the main characters, not only the strip but in the TV show, Huey Freeman, they all try to warn that pretty much in a nutshell he was going to get off. And at the end of the episode, it even showed how black people like, because he was a great singer, they were trying to give him a pass, and you couldn't give him a pass based on his artistic merit. Basically, this man was messing with underage women, and as I stated earlier, these stories are going on way before then. And before I get back to it, let's go back to the story of Aaliyah. Now, I remember specifically, and this is way before the trial, I remember reading an article. I think it was XXL Presents Hip Hop Soul. This was XXL's quarterly version of the regular XXL magazine, but it was for R&B. I remember reading that article verbatim. I can't remember who was on the cover. But in that article, he stated that he had married Aaliyah because Aaliyah reminded him of his mom. Now, how the fuck does a 15-year-old girl at that time, and this is 94, how does a 15-year-old girl remind you of your mother? Now, I find out later on in life that he was sexually abused himself, and that's probably where these tendencies come from. Unfortunately, he didn't control these urges, so that now the victim actually becomes the predator now, in this case. So we can't see him give him a pass. As much as it's fucked up what happened to him in his childhood, the point is, he still went on to participate in the behavior, so now he became a sexual deviant, predator and a deviant. Let's just put it out there for what it is. Again, I'm not speaking on artistic merit, because like I say, he was one talented R&B singer. We're talking about not R. Kelly, but Robert Kelly, the man himself. But going back to the Boondocks, and that was pretty much what the whole episode was, and he pretty much got off scot-free. Pretty much Aaron McGruder was a prophet of his time, and he did this episode in 2006. The trial wasn't even to 2 years later. Of course, Dave Chappelle had his little fun with his skit, how could I pee on you? One of the best skits on the Dave Chappelle show. If you never watched it, you could probably catch that on YouTube itself. But getting to the point, the trial comes. Pretty much, and even before the trial, there was a situation where R. Kelly's own brother, he had an alias called Killer Kells, by the way. That was actually his musical name. I don't think he was very good as a rapper, but he even came out and stated that R. Kelly wanted him to take the blame for the video, and he was like, fuck no. And I can't even blame him for that one. Now, when your own brother is going against you, coming on camera saying you're a sick individual, there's something to be noted there. And this is his own brother saying this. I don't know their whole relationship. It's probably not cool. I don't know. But needless to say, after the trials, he was found not guilty. And the reason about it, because there was a person, and I want to get his name right, who actually broke the story, which we're going to get to the whole segue about that, the irony of this coming up. Let me find his name. Let me find the person's name. Ironically, the person who discovered all this when he got the hold of the videotape was by a person named John DeRogatis. I want to make sure I got that right. Jim DeRogatis. He was the one who originally had got the videotape back then and put the story out. Well, he's back in the news again because just basically 2 days ago, actually I want to say a day ago, there's a leak. He wrote a whole extensive expose R. Kelly again on BuzzFeed.com about him running a cult. Yes, R. Kelly running a cult. Basically getting his Pied Piper on, so to speak. And I don't give a fuck whose feelings is hurt by all this. Like I said, I was a fan of his music, but once all this shit came to light, even way before up to this point, I had to disassociate myself from that. But pretty much in a nutshell, and before we get into that, let's even look at his history. I already went through the whole Leah thing. The last thing that happened, I believe it was last year, a year and a half ago, R. Kelly is now 50 years old. There was a situation where R. Kelly was dating a 19-year-old girl. Now you're probably thinking, well, what's the big deal about him dating a 19-year-old girl? Hugh Hefner did the same thing. Okay, duly noted. But here's the difference between R. Kelly and Hugh Hefner, aside from the color of their skin, is the fact that Hugh Hefner didn't have a history of messing with underage women. Maybe younger women, but not underage women. Now you're thinking, about this girl's 19, sure. But it shows the behavior didn't change. That was like spitting in the face. You found not guilty, even though the video showed you were messing with the underage girl. And the only reason you got off because this leads to the point here, Jim Regatas, the person who wrote this article, which we're going to get into later on, decided not to release, for him to testify, he had to give up who his sources was. And he did not do this. And this is the reason why R. Kelly beat the case. That was the only reason why R. Kelly got beat that case. It was only because he didn't testify. Because for him to testify, he would have to give up who his sources were. And he didn't do that. And now and later on in life, he's still here to say he regrets not doing it now. Because now with the sex cult and everything that's happening, he wishes he could have put it into it back then. So that's where that leads to this whole point. But let's get to the whole cult situation now. We go to the present day now. Pretty much in a nutshell, there was two parents, and yes, there was the mother and the father. And I have to say off the bat, I can't respect them based off this alone, letting your daughter near R. Kelly, knowing the fact that he has a history of messing with underage women. But because R. Kelly's famous and the daughter can sing, they figured, if we can supervise them, this won't happen to our daughter. And we can get her the career that she wants with her talent. And this is why I have a real problem with. They pretty much put, even though they were trying to get the daughter quote unquote a record deal, so to speak, which doesn't make sense in the year 2017 now, because you can just be independent and do your own thing. But we're not here to talk about the music industry. That's a topic for a whole nother day. They decided to use the naivety, or maybe their own ulterior motives and their own agenda to push their daughter to say, we'll use your daughter up to us get a better life. That's what I personally think happened here. Unfortunately, this turned out to backfire on them. Pretty much, again, this is in the story on BuzzFeed.com, so you can read that yourself. But pretty much, I'm trying to get the name of the parents here. Oh, the mother who went by her, just calls herself Jay, and the father, which was named Tim. They're basically in a desperate struggle right now to bring their daughter home. And they're saying that she was kidnapped. Now, here's the thing. For it to be a kidnapping charge, it had to be against their will. And because she's been to R. Kelly telling the police that she's fine, they can't consider that to be kidnapping. And that's what the whole situation lies into. Now, because now the mother's been desperately trying to fight to get their daughter home. She's only spoke to her daughter twice, as a matter of fact. And it was via text messages. The mother pretty much closed her own business down and she became an amateur detective. And she shared the FBI findings with the FBI and the police in 2 states, because R. Kelly has a home, not only properties in Chicago, but he also has properties in around Atlanta, Georgia, and Atlanta area. So that's where his 2 houses are. Pretty much he has a couple of women under his belt. We'll get to that in a moment. But there were 3 former members of his inner circle named Cheryl Mack, Kitty Jones, and Asante McGee. And they pretty much confirmed their parents' suspicions. 6 women lived in the properties that were rented by R. Kelly, which again was in Chicago and Atlanta suburbs. And he controls every aspect of their lives, dictating how to eat, how they dress, when they bathe, how to sleep, who they talk to, what sexual encounters, what to be said to R. Kelly, what not to be said. Pretty much the whole game of pimping and hoeing, pretty much, so to speak. In fact, last time Jay, which again that's a pseudonym because she wanted to reveal her name, saw her daughter, it was in January 1st, 2016. That was just a few months ago. But pretty much in a nutshell, he has a harem, so to speak. And all these women can actually sing. So all they believe is if they follow the protocol, they can become stars under R. Kelly. But it's been years and nothing's happened. This kind of reminds me of the whole, what was that boy band? NSYNC. There was a series manager, I can't remember his name, but there's actually a whole series, this whole docu-series about that on YouTube. Just look up Just look up boy band scandal or whatever have you. You can find that yourself. But that story kind of reminds me of that, except he's doing this now. So pretty much in a nutshell, R. Kelly is not the musical guy he used to be. In fact, he peaked around the mid 2000s. That was it for him right there. That was his peak. Last album he came out was in 2013. I did not listen to the album. Did not care to listen to the album. But that was the last record he actually released anything called The Buffet. The irony of that name, huh? But I digress from the point. These women pretty much aired R. Kelly and let him know what the situation was going on. In fact, they even say it got to the point where Mac, who worked as Kelly's personal assistant for a year and a half, started in 2013 and remained in touch with some of the members of the inner circle. You have to ask for food. You have to ask even use to the bathroom. Now, that's some Jim Jones type of shit right there. And of course, they had a sexual relation. We'll go ahead and skip the whole details about that. That's not so much really I want to get into. Well, it is part of the thing. But the women living, there's a list of women who were there now. There was a 30-year-old den mother, a.k.a. the madam. That's pretty much the best way to describe a den mother. Because she trains the newcomers on how Kelly liked to be pledged sexually. In fact, she had been best friends since high school with the girl in the videotape for which Kelly was trying to which again, rumor was Sparkle's niece. And she had recently parted ways with R. Kelly. And this is the 31-year-old and the best friend of the one who was in the tape. There's also a 25-year-old woman who was part of R. Kelly's scene for 7 years and nothing musical has came to fruition. A recent arrival was the 19-year-old model who had been photographed with R. Kelly, and I can actually show you a picture of her because I remember when that happened. I'll actually show you a picture of her. And you'll probably see that on the screen right now as you're looking at it. And there's also an Atlanta songwriter who began a relationship with R. Kelly around 2009. She was also 19. She's now 26. So years has passed and nothing still came on. I'm not even sure what her name is, much as she get placements in the credits for any songs that she wrote. And the last was an 18-year-old girl singer, and is, according to Mac, is Kelly's favorite #1 girl. R. Kelly pretty much calls them his babies and required them call him daddy. Again, there goes the whole Pied Piper theme once again. And they must ask permission to leave Chicago recording studio or their assigned rooms in the guest house. Like I said, this guy's a sick fuck. It's an actual problem. Not that we didn't know. But here comes the problem where some people want to give him a pass because what they do for people musically. And again, he's one hell of a singer, no question. As far as R&B, he's already solidified himself as one of the greatest singers. Unfortunately, though, that gets washed away because of who R. Kelly really is, and we referring to R. Kelly, Robert Kelly, the man, not R. Kelly, the entertainer. And according to Mac, who again used to be part of the harem, they say if any of the women actually broke R. Kelly's rules, he will punish them physically and verbally. But there's another person that used to be part of the harem named McGee says she never saw R. Kelly hit anybody. So who knows if that's true or false? I couldn't begin to say that. But both agreed that he manipulated them emotionally and sexually. There's certainly no question about that. In fact, one of the McGee even quoted R. Kelly, and by R. Kelly he means a singer. She means a singer is the sweetest person you ever want to meet. But Robert Kelly, the man, is the devil. That's how she described this man. That's very interesting to hear that parallel. But because these girls are underage, well, they're legal but underage, so to speak. They're considered adults. They can take part in any relationship they want, no matter how non-traditional. Even welfare checks by the police in both Illinois and Georgia in the past didn't lead to any charges because, again, they're legal and they didn't consider themselves to be kidnapped. Matter of fact, now here's what's interesting, and I did not know this, because in Illinois, the age of consent is 17. Ugh, that's disgusting. And 16 in Georgia. Whoa, I did not know that. I knew there was different ages of consent in different states, but 16 years old. So R. Kelly's pretty much in heaven in Georgia. Makes sense for him to be there, huh? It's just really sad. But like I said, not all the parents are to blame except the particular parents I mentioned at the beginning, Jay and Tim, because they knew what R. Kelly was and they even heard the stories about how this man was, and it chose to put the daughter in that position anyway. So I can't feel the least bit sorry for. The only I feel sorry for is that girl. It's their daughter. That's the only I feel sorry for. I can't feel sorry for the parents, and I kind of have no fucking respect for them of it. This is why Jason Black always says, be careful who... You can't just call any older person an elder. You have to really look at what they've done and what their history is before you can give them that title. Jason Black has always talked about that. And this is the perfect example. So I have no respect for the fucking parents. My heart grieves to them as far as their daughter and not them seeing their daughter, but I can't give them any respect based on this knowing what R. Kelly was in the history that they knew, and it still put their daughter in that position anyway. So I can't respect that whatsoever. It's really sad, but pretty much R. Kelly, of course, as you know, is already denied. Is already completely denied him running a cult. But this doesn't help. But I believe it to be true because of history. R. Kelly is too much history that's gone on with this man to not believe it. It's just too much history. Matter of fact, there was even a situation where one of the girls that used to live there, in 2002, there was an Illinois lawsuit filed by Montana Woods, who was a dancer that toured R. Kelly's friend Ronald Isley. Yes, Ronald Isley of the Isley Brothers legendary group. She was unknowingly recorded by Kelly during sex. And basically, R. Kelly settled the suit, paying was an undisclosed sum. And also, there was a lawsuit on April 21st, which was just recent. A Mississippi lawsuit was filed with alleged affair between Kelly and Bryant's wife. Kenny Bryant's wife. I remember this story because he chased it. I remember this story as a matter of fact because he chased this guy. Actually, got played by his wife to move to another state, to be Tennessee, so she would be close to R. Kelly. I remember this whole the Mississippi to be close to R. Kelly. I remember this whole situation. He looked like a fool in front of the whole media. I remember this guy, and he got played pretty much badly. But like I said, R. Kelly has this he's a fucking sick individual. He's a fucking pedophile. There's nothing much more to even be said about this guy. Nothing more to even be said about it. And like I said, you got too many people who want to give him a pass because of his musical genius and be hypnotized by the music. Sort of like how the Pied Piper did the children and the rats. Ironically, the irony of the whole statement alone. But it's pretty much sick and it fucking disgusts me. And it's a whole big problem. Now, will R. Kelly ever be tried? We don't know. And we have no idea how that would happen. We don't even know. And I can't, honestly, I don't think it's going to be. But again, we can only hope. We can actually only hope. And there's no telling. And let's not think about, and the most damaging part is, let's think about the psychological effects. Not only women he's with now, but the women he used to be with. They're going to be psychologically damaged forever. They're never going to recover from this. And there's the real true tragedy of the whole thing, is that they're permanently, emotionally, and psychologically damaged for the rest of their lives. But you guys go ahead and leave a comment in, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.